Stephen Etchington here from Westminster, and today I'm reporting from Fishing for Leave at Conservative Party conference. We will be talking to the founder and other members about why they think that they have been betrayed by Theresa May and what they think the European Union has done to their industry. So, you are the founder of Fishing for Leave, Aaron. Now, what do you think about the government's current fishing policy?
Absolutely disastrous. Well, it's disastrous because of the wider Brexit context. The white paper has some noble aspirations in it, but the problem is the proof's going to be in the pudding. And the government's wider strategy towards Brexit and the capitulation of Chequers renders the fisheries policy that they propose mute, because we're still going to be bound to the EU, we're still going to be bound to the common fisheries policy, and after the 21-month transition, the EU can enforce any detrimental legislation it pleases. We will have to obey that under good faith, because that's what good faith means, full obedience to that law, and that means they can cull our fleet. And if they can cull our fleet, they have every incentive to do so, because under international law, if a nation, which we will be again officially, cannot catch its own resources, it must give the surplus to its neighbours. So the EU has every reason to wipe our fleet out in 21 months, and then they can turn around and say, you can't catch your resources, so we have the lot. So the transition and Chequers is an existential threat. We're on a knife edge. We can have a really bright future, or we could end up decimating what's left of an industry.
And what is it that you're calling for the government to do?
The government needs to walk away. It absolutely needs to walk away. It needs to chuck Chequers. A free trade agreement like Canada would be preferable. Nobody would disagree with that, but that's what all Europe was meant to be about, trading, just as we do with other nations in the world. It's not meant to be about political union. Chequers is political union, membership is political union, and we need to be clear of both to get our industry back, revert to international law. That gives us all our waters, all our resources automatically, and then we can manage it sustainably like Norway, like Iceland, and like Faroe. So the government now has got to chuck Chequers and walk away. Free trade agreement, fair enough, but anything else, an absolute no.
Some Remainers say that your industry is so small that it's irrelevant and we shouldn't even bother talking about it in the Brexit negotiations or use it as a bargaining chip to get other things like free trade agreements, etc. What do you say to that?
Well, never have a bunch of people hated their own country so much as the Remainers. And the sad thing is that they miss is they besmirch the industry that it isn't worth very much. Well, the reason it's been so denuded is because of their beloved EU. If we get back control of our waters, our industry could double. When that goes through to process value, which is what's going to be the wider spread in coastal communities, you're looking at an industry worth about £8 billion a year. That would be about 22,000 fishermen, about 100,000 ancillary jobs, and when you spread that out to the wider communities, you're talking in surplus of 100,000 people. So it's no small industry at all, especially for areas that have very little else in rural and coastal communities. The one thing I would ask Remainers when they say your industry is only 0.5% is, how much is your job worth to the economy?
Do you think politicians, are looking out for British fishermen over the last sort of 40 years?
I think if it hadn't been for our strenuous efforts with Fishing for Leave, that fishing wouldn't be one of the acid tests of Brexit. There's a huge thanks got to be given to some prominent politicians like Owen Paterson, Nigel Farage, for their unceasing endeavours to right what is a terrible injustice, not just in the fishermen themselves, but the British people. It's their resource. So it's an acid test. The government's paying lip service to it, but as we said with the fisheries white paper, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And if they don't chuck Chequers, if they don't revert back to international law, where we automatically repatriate our own resources, they'll have betrayed British coastal communities a second time.